Good morning, everybody. Welcome to class this morning. As we get started this morning, just the first things first is I want to apologize for not having a live stream for Module 1. Just apologizing for Module 1 kind of happening so quickly. But hopefully you can kind of take a little bit of a bright side out of that situation where, you had one super busy weekend right up front here, and it'll kind of make things calm down for the rest of the course. And it also means that you'll have an entire week coming up here in, I believe it's October, the week of like October the 4th or so, that you won't have anything at all due for this class. You can kind of take a big breath and relax just a little bit for that week and enjoy a fall break. But I want to start off by kind of discussing the class just a little bit, and kind of the perspective of what we'll be doing in this class and all that kind of stuff. You should have got some of that by watching the videos that have been posted already. But, there's really a lot going on here. This is a course that really is sort of a necessary course for basically everybody that's going into one of our IT degree programs. Essentially because when we look at what we're doing, for a lot of our students, an entry-level job after they receive their degree is going to be in some kind of support somewhere, right? So whether it is on a help desk or providing tier 1 support as like a level 1 analyst, or even if it's providing tier 2 or tier 3 support as a higher level analyst, your skills in training and support are going to be important. And so that's the big goal around this course, is to kind of give you some perspective in terms of what we're looking for someone who is providing tech support and providing computer training to people. Right? And that's kind of where we're starting to move in this next module when we're examining these customer service skills. Because customer service skills are absolutely crucial, really in any job, but especially in this one. I think that's one thing that you'll find kind of as we work throughout the semester, is that a lot of the things that we're going to talk about over the course of the next 14 weeks or so is going to be centered around things that will really, really help you a lot if you are in some kind of computer training and support role. But they can also help you regardless of the career field that you enter, because a lot of these skills that we'll be discussing and a lot of these ideas that we'll be talking about are universal, and they're things that apply to not just tech support agents, but really everybody, right? And customer service skills are definitely one of those things. And I think this is probably one of the more important modules for the entire course, is this idea of customer service skills. Because one of the things that, we as like IT people want to do, right, is we kind of want to, a lot of people get into IT because they have this preconceived notion in their brains that if you get into IT, it means that you can just kind of sit back in a back room and work on things and not have to interact with a lot of people and just be to yourself, or just work with your group of coworkers. And more, that's exceedingly becoming not the case. As was discussed in the last video, we saw the rise of the knowledge worker, the people who need computers to be able to process information to do their jobs. And with this rise in the knowledge worker, with the number of people that are needing computers, these people aren't experts in making sure the computer runs, making sure the computer works. They're experts in whatever job they do. And it just so happens to be that they need that computer in order to be able to do that job that they do, that they're an expert in. And so when things go wrong, when things stop working, when something isn't quite what it should be, that's where we come in. Right? And we're supposed to help them out, and then so they can continue doing their jobs. Our job is to be able to empower other people to do their jobs by making sure that they have the training and support necessary to work their computer. So increasingly, as this number of knowledge workers just grows exponentially, increasingly the need for a good understanding of customer service is present, because that's what you're doing essentially all day, every day, is you're providing customer service. And so as we're approaching this topic, one of the first things we have to discuss is what it means to have a customer service ethic. And I think this is sort of important when we kind of look at breaking down the idea of the customer service ethic, just exactly what all is going on here. We see my first bullet point here is that a customer service ethic is an organization-wide commitment. And when I say organization-wide, I mean we're talking about everybody from the highest boss at the company, the president, the CEO, however you want to put it, down to what would be considered to be, one of the lower ranking employees in the company. Because it's every single one of these employees, everybody from, like even a janitor at a place that provides computer tech support is a part of that customer service ethic, because they're crucial to maintaining an environment in which all this stuff can happen in an effective and efficient manner. Everybody has a role, regardless of their status, in air quotes, regardless of their station or their status in the company. Everybody has a role that supports the idea of customer service. So when we're talking about having a customer service ethic, it's a top to bottom, bottom to top ideology where really everybody has to be on board with the fact that we have these customers that we're serving, and they need whatever services that we as individuals provide. So because they need those services to support them, right? Because really, when we're looking at the client relationship between you as the organization, or you as the individual that works at the organization, and that client satisfaction, these are really the most important aspects of a business, just maintaining these relationships and maintaining this satisfaction. And we do have a goal when it comes to client satisfaction, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But there are things that we shoot for here in terms of trying to maintain our relationships and maintaining satisfaction with our clients. And all of that is a part of this customer service ethic commitment. So when we say that everybody from the top to bottom, bottom to top, needs to be committed to customer service, this is what we need. We want to be able to provide users with the information, the service, or the solution that they need. Right? And one of the big things here is that, we kind of have to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of that user. As that user walks into the room, or as that user walks into the building even, what is the experience that they're having? And we even kind of want to go back even further and talk about, well, what is the experience that led this user here? Right? Because, I know a friend of the family, I provided tech support for them quite a bit. And they have family that live overseas. Right? And the only means they have of really being able to communicate with that individual, with that member of their family that lives overseas, is via Skype on the computer. Right? So if there's something that happens that causes the computer to not work, they don't necessarily know how to fix it. But what that means is that they're unable to talk to their loved one that lives thousands of miles away. So when we start looking at things in that sort of perspective, or when we start looking at things in the perspective of, well, this person, this knowledge worker, needs this computer to do their job. And if that computer is not working, that means they can't do their job, which means that their company is losing money, and they very well themselves might be losing money, for all the time that they're unable to do their job. So we can kind of see here, a personal and a professional example of how crucial this need can be. So we want to be able to provide users with the information, the service, or the solution that they need to take that time that is crucial to them to be able to do the thing that they want or need to do, and the time that they're not able to do that thing, and diminish it, make it as short as possible. Now, if a problem can't be resolved, which there's an altogether likelihood that there are occasions when problems cannot be resolved, we need to be able to explain to the client what can be done. Right? So we either need to fix the problem by providing the information, the service, or the solution that they need, or if we can't fix the problem, we need to be able to explain to the client what exactly we can do or what we're able to do to try to help them with their situation. At the end of the day, we're trying to treat our clients with respect and courtesy. We're coming into this again with the idea that these people have a need. The client that comes in for tech support has a need. And their need is not the same way as we generally look at it. Like we oftentimes think that, they need their computer to be fixed. But that's not their real need, right? Like, that's not the real thing that they need. Their need is to be able to contact their loved ones. There needs to be able to do their work. There needs to be able to, access their photos and their files that they have on their computer. Right? The thing that is important to them about that computer, about that machine that we're servicing. And I think by and large, especially in the tech support world, we see a real what's a good word to use here? Like, we see a real stigma, and we see a real bad I've kind of lost the word here. We see people who aren't acting this way, or we have this preconceived notion that the IT person is, this cantankerous, not friendly, angry, person that, feels like you're bothering them when you ask them for help. Right? And oftentimes, we can kind of fall into that negative mold because we have this feeling of, well, I know how to do it. They should know how to do it too, which isn't the case, right? Like, we need to be able to treat clients with respect, treat clients with courtesy, communicate with them on when they should expect to receive their service or whatever information that they need. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the computer that's in front of you. It's about what they do with that computer that is so important to them. And so as such, we have our customer service goal. And this is our customer service goal. Our customer service goal is 100% client satisfaction 100% of the time. 100% client satisfaction 100% of the time. Now, I can almost hear you right now. I can almost hear you. I can almost hear what you're thinking. Mr. Ramsey, that's impossible. There's no way that you can have that kind of absolute 100% client satisfaction 100% in time, 100% of the time. That's a pipe dream. That's something that's not realistic. That's something that will never happen. And if you're thinking that right now, you're right. But what I want you to see here is what else this slide says. Right? This is not our reality. This is not our metric. This is not the thing that we want to make sure that we have all of the time. This is our goal. This is what we want to be able to do. Right? And just because it's probably not possible, it doesn't mean that you're not going to strive to try to make it possible. Do everything you can to try to make it possible. Because you can kind of think of it like in the perspective of, let's say, when you're a little kid, right? When you're a little kid, you have these dreams of what you want to be when you grow up. And maybe you want to be a pro athlete. And people tell you, and you kind of realize it's very, very, very unlikely. Right? Like out of all the people that play basketball or football or baseball, maybe 100 or so get drafted every year. There's an infinitesimally small chance that you'll make it to the major leagues in whatever your sport of choice is. But when you're a kid, does that stop you from practicing? Does it stop you from liking or loving the game? Does it stop you from playing? Obviously not. Right? Like it's the same thing here. Even though we understand that 100% client satisfaction 100% of the time is probably not possible, that doesn't mean that we're going to stop practicing. That doesn't mean that we're going to stop trying to make this our goal. To have 100% client satisfaction 100% of the time. You can't please all the people all the time. You've probably heard that saying, but you can try. And in this case, with our customer service ethic, we want to try. That's the big thing. And I think one of the key things to look at here is why we would have this goal, right? What it means for us if a customer is satisfied versus what it means for us if a customer is dissatisfied. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. What does it mean for us as a company or us as an individual who is providing this service if a customer is satisfied? And that's line 1 here. Satisfied customers are more likely to be repeat customers. Which at the end of the day, right? Tech support, all this stuff, it's a business. It's a business. And so as a business, you want to be able to generate funds. You want to be able to make money. You want to be able to get paid. So if your customers are satisfied, if your customers are happy with the services that you provide, your ability to get paid goes up, which is what we want. Right? The more satisfied customers you have, either the more you can get paid, or the more opportunities that you have to create jobs for people to get paid. Which is significant. It's enormous. Right? Like at the end of the day, like that's what we're all kind of in whatever job we are in for. You know, hopefully we're good at the job that we want, or we like to do the job that we want, so that we're actively trying to provide value to this career field and provide value to what's going on there. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to sustain yourself. And it's really hard to do that without money. And so whether we look at it from the perspective of the individual here, or we look at it from the perspective of a business, we want these satisfied customers because they'll help us make more money. Because they'll come back and they'll need other services, and they'll want to come to us because they know we know what we're doing. And as much as satisfied customers help us, dissatisfied customers hurt us. Right? Because a dissatisfied customer incident, on average, takes longer to handle than a customer that you are working to make sure they're satisfied. So what does that mean for us, right? Like, what does that mean in terms of this incident taking longer to handle? Well, what else could you be doing in that time period that you're taking so long with this dissatisfied customer? You could be helping other customers. You could be making more money. But instead, you have to hyper-focus and hyper-fixate on this one customer because their needs weren't met. You didn't provide them with the information or the service in a manner in which they needed it. Because you see, these dissatisfied customers, they generate lengthy incidents. They generate repeated callbacks or help desk contacts, which just takes up more and more and more time. They complain and they bring about ill will, right? Which is going to put a negative perspective onto you or onto your company. You have incidents that have to be rerouted and passed around, taken up the ladder to higher levels of support. And that takes up time. And you have product returns and refund requests, and that's just straight up loss. Right? So at the core of keeping our customers satisfied, we talked about it on like the previous slide here with our CSE commitment. You see here, communicate to clients, return calls, try to resolve their problem. The core of what we're trying to do to meet our customer satisfaction goal here of 100% client satisfaction 100% of the time, and to keep ourselves away from these dissatisfied customers, the core behind that is communication. Making sure we're communicating adequately, thoroughly, properly with these customers in a language that they understand. And in order for us to do that, we use what we call the LAST method of communication. And LAST is an acronym here. It stands for listen, apologize, solve, and thank. And this is something that you might have heard of in other instances of customer support, right? Like if you worked in retail, they might have talked about the LAST method for retail customer support, or any type of customer support. Having this communication skill that revolves around first listening is going to be critical. Listening is a huge deal. And when we listen for a lot of reasons. I have these purposes for listening here. And we have 6 different purposes for listening. And when we're listening to anybody, when we're listening to people tell a story, for example, which is like what your lab is for this module. When we're listening to people tell a story, we're listening to it with a certain purpose. When we're listening to music, we're listening to it for a certain purpose. And so when we are listening to a customer or a client talk about their needs for support, we're listening to what they have to say with purpose. And we have several different purposes here: discriminative, comprehensive, critical, therapeutic, appreciative, and relational. And when we're listening to a customer talk about their needs in terms of what they need for tech support, the real challenge is that we really need to be listening with several of these purposes. For example, first we have discriminative. We want to learn about the user. And this kind of goes back to Module 1 when we were looking at our user classification tool. We want to learn about this individual. What are they using the computer for? How many of these features are they using? Are they a power user? Are they sort of a novice? We have to listen to what they're saying and decipher from what they're saying who they are. Right? Because that's going to help us determine how we respond and communicate with them in kind. Right? We take different approaches to different types of users, and that's one of the big deals that we use because we classify our users. That classification that we were talking about in Module 1 is the foundation for being able to adequately and properly communicate with our user in a language that they understand. We also want to listen comprehensively. We want to understand the user's message. We want to really understand what they're saying, because really, in terms of what we do as a tech support agent, oftentimes we're not only someone who helps fix a computer, we're an interpreter. Right? We have to listen to what the user is saying their problem is, and then based on that, we need to really understand what's going on, because the way that they communicate it and the way that we might communicate it might be two totally separate things. So we have to be able to code switch in that kind of way. You know, think about things that are kind of from the perspective of who this user is and how they use the computer. And interpret it into something that makes sense for us to be able to solve problems. And that leads us into listening critically. We need to be able to analyze and evaluate the user's message. And a lot of times what we're talking about here when it comes to this is something that we'll talk about a little later on, when we talk about things like escalation and tiers and who needs that support. You know, we need to take this, we need to learn about the user, understand the problem that they're relaying to us in their own words, and then we need to be able to take that problem and evaluate it and figure out whether we can solve it now, whether it's something that has to be sent up the ladder to a higher tier of service, whether it might just need to be a replacement, or what have you. Right? We need to be able to evaluate that user's message. We need to be able to evaluate what they've told us to start to solve the problem. And we also need to listen therapeutically. And I think this is where we kind of, the last two ways, which appreciative is kind of a gray area. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But therapeutic and relational are also ways that we need to listen as a customer support agent. Because when we're talking about therapeutic, we're talking about identifying opportunities for positive support. And I'm going to tell you right now, there'll be a lot of times when you're working as a tech support person, at a help desk, what have you. There'll be a lot of times when your users are going to come to you for support and they're going to be frustrated. They're going to be at their wits' end. You know, it goes back to that kind of stuff that we were talking about earlier. They can't talk to their loved ones who live halfway around the world. They can't do their work. They can't have some downtime that they enjoy to kind of break away from stressful job things. Because there's something wrong with the device that they use to do that. They're frustrated. They're at their wits' end. They don't know what to do because not only is this thing not working, but the consequences of this thing not working is beginning to weigh on them. So it's one thing to be able to say, yes, we can solve that problem. But it's a completely different thing to be able to say, we can get you back up and running, doing the things that you want to do, talking to your family, talking to your friends, doing your work, whatever it is. You know, acknowledging the frustration. And showing that user a little bit of compassion really goes a long way to help build those relationships. Which does go hand in hand with that relational listening. You're developing rapport. You're developing a client relationship. When you see that client the next time, you'll know them by name. You'll remember the issues they had in the past. And you can say, oh, hey, Bill, how's the such and such issue? How's that going for you? Is that better now? And maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. But at least you remembered. And you kind of developed this rapport, and they understand that you care. Right, and I think that's a big issue. You know, I think when we get into tech support, again, you know, it's oftentimes seen that the tech support person, the help desk person, they don't care. And my problem is so much bigger than a broken computer to me. But to them, it's just another dead hard drive. To them, it's just unseated RAM or a dead video card or whatever. You've lost that human element. And really, when we're talking about customer service and customer support, we're talking about something that should be human-centered. And appreciative is something, you know, appreciative listening is something that you can do as a customer service agent. Like if you like your job and you like, you know, listening to people and trying to figure out their problems, you can also listen appreciatively. I'm not going to tell you this is a requirement. Right? I think at the very least you should feign appreciative listening, just so people can think that you're engaged in, you know, that you find enjoyment in it. You know, I don't necessarily think you have to find enjoyment in it, but you should be engaged. You should be listening actively. Right? And listening carefully. And when we break down careful listening, we're talking about, you know, we want to listen to the problem description. We want to listen to the language used to describe the problem. That's going to take you back to that discriminative and comprehensive listening. We want to listen to more than just what they say. Listen to how they say it. right? Like if they come in and they say, yeah, I seem to be having this problem. That's one thing, right? If they say it like, yeah, I seem to be having this problem. But then if they say like, if they come in and they're like, yeah, I'm having a problem. Right? Those two different sentences, they're the same sentences. They're the same words. But the tone and kind of the surrounding words and the different things that we put into place there are very, very different. And they look at things differently. Right? And it's these two separate sentences, even though they're the same sentences, you have to approach that user differently because they're in a different headspace. And so one of the things that I always do is I always recommend for you all to take a class in communication, one of the comm classes. It's not a requirement, right? But I think it will make you a better communicator. It'll make you a better, even if all it does is kind of get you accustomed to speaking to other people, that is crucial to being a good help desk agent or being a good tech support person. Absolutely crucial. And so when we're listening carefully like this, we're listening effectively, but there are barriers to effective listening. There are things that can stand in our way that don't allow us to listen properly, don't allow us to listen effectively, and here they are. Focusing on your concerns, that's the first one. Allocating insufficient time, that's the second one. Talking instead of listening, that's the third one. Talking to avoid silences, the fourth one. And avoiding eye contact, the fifth one. These are all barriers. These are all things that can stand in our way. And let's break these down just a little bit. Focusing on your own concerns. Everybody to a degree is selfish. Right? Even if you're trying to listen, even if you're trying to do things right, we often have a tendency to think something's true or think something's the case when maybe it's not. So we end up getting this preconceived notion about what's going on. And that'll immediately send us off chasing our own rabbits. And when we just get hyper fixated on what we think is the problem, that we stop listening. Like, somebody might come in and they might use some terms that maybe indicate that they're not a very strong computer user. And you might just immediately get fixated on, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. They're clicking the wrong thing. They're doing the wrong thing. It's something that the user is doing that's causing this problem. And you just get fixated on that. And that's the only thing that you can think about. And in the meantime, you're not listening to the things that they're saying to you, where if you did, you'd find out the actual problem, and it might not have anything to do with them. It might be a real, actual problem that's going on. So when we enter into a situation like this, we have to enter in without bias. Without any preconceived notions. We have to listen to every client as if it's the first time we're hearing of such a problem. And by and large, it's going to be the same problems over and over and over and over again, right? Because there's a handful of problems, and it's something that we'll talk about in a future module. There's a handful of problems that you see the most often. But we can't just jump to those conclusions before we've heard someone out. Allowing insufficient time. Right? That person, that client that's coming to you to get their computer fixed might not be very knowledgeable of computers, and it might take them a while to get the information out that they need to get out about what's going on, because they don't really understand what's going on themselves. Or maybe they, have interpersonal issues, have anxiety about, talking to people, talking to strangers in situations like this. And it takes them longer to get their ideas out, and it takes them longer to say what they need to say as a result. So if you allow insufficient time, if you say, just tell me your problems, I got about 45, I got a little bit of time here, and you're rushing them, and they might not get out what they need to get out about the problem. And so you're left with an incomplete story because they're rushed. You didn't give them enough time. And so when I'm facing some situations like this, and I'm listening to people who have these problems and they're coming to me for help, what I want to do is I want to treat them like they're the only person in the world at that time. They have my time, they have my attention, and they're the only person there at that given time. You might have a million other things going on, but at that time, they're the only person there. And they have the time that they need to tell me what the problem is, to get out what they need to get out about the issue. Another one's talking instead of listening. That's pretty obvious, right? If you're talking, you can't be listening because you're focusing on what you're trying to say instead of focusing on what they're saying. Talking to avoid silences. Silence is not always a bad thing, right? Like, silence is awkward, and that's why we like to talk to avoid silences. But sometimes when people have these silences, what they're trying to do is they're trying to think of something. They're trying to formulate the words that they need to say to express something that they need to express. Sometimes a topic or whatever just needs to marinate. And it just needs to be out in the world for a second before you try to jump in and cut them off and say something. So silences can be valuable. It's human nature kind of not to like silences, especially when you're in a group, because it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, it's whatever. But especially in these situations where we want to make sure people are getting the thoughts out that they want to get out, and that they're expressing the things that we need them to express, and that we're understanding them in that sort of way. Those silences can be extremely valuable. And then we have avoiding eye contact. And this kind of goes back to this idea of allocating insufficient time as well. When you're avoiding eye contact, the big thing there is it makes me think, you don't care. You don't care. You don't care what I have to say. You're not engaged in what I'm saying. You're not involved in what I'm saying. You don't care. It doesn't matter to you. So as a result, whether you're actually actively listening or not, they don't know that you are. Because listening by its nature is a passive action, right? Like, I can listen to anybody around me who's talking and not look like I'm doing it. But you have to get involved. You have to listen actively and look at them and, give them some sort of signifier back that you're hearing what they're saying. Like, nod at certain points that, yeah, you heard that and you understood that. And, you've got this eye contact focused on them. Let them know that you care and that it's not a waste of their time, that they're standing there talking about their situation. It's absolutely crucial. It's absolutely important. So listening is super important. It's the first letter in our acronym L last. Let's move on to the second letter in our acronym, which is our A, which is apologize. Now, here's the thing about an apology. There is a rare occasion where you might have done something, you might have made the mistake. But most of the time, 98 times out of 100, you have no direct involvement in the problem. You didn't do anything. It's not yours to apologize for. Apologize anyway. When I say apologize in this instance, I'm not talking about apologizing for something that you did. I'm talking about apologizing for a situation that this other person's in. I'm talking about building empathy. And it's this sort of empathy that's going to that's going to build that customer relationship even more. We're starting to build empathy. We're starting to understand and identify with that client's situation, with that client's thoughts, with that client's feelings. We're not only showing them that we're capable of handling their problem, but we're also showing them that we understand that it is a problem because of X, Y, and Z, and we're going to help them solve it. You know, this gets to that idea of human-centered support. We're not supporting computers. We don't do computer support. We do human support. We're supporting these humans. We're supporting these people by making sure their computers work in order to do what they need to do. The computer doesn't care that you changed its hard drive, or added more RAM, or seated the video card, or whatever you did. The computer doesn't care about that. The computer is an inanimate object. What cares about that is the person that uses that computer. We don't support computers. We support people that use computers. And apologizing to that person, even when nothing's your fault, goes a long way to show them that you're on their side. The next thing that we want to do is we want to solve the problem. And we solve a problem. When we're solving problems, we kind of break down the way that we solve the problem. One is we're going to build understanding. And two is that we're going to resolve effectively. So when we're building an understanding, we're building an understanding of both the user and the problem. And this understanding also develops empathy. You know, we're furthering developing empathy after our apology. Something like, oh, it sounds like you've had a very frustrating morning, but I think I can help you with this. Right? Think about that. Put yourself in that situation. You've had a computer problem. It's causing this issue. That issue is not allowing you to do X, Y, and Z. You go to the help desk to get the problem solved. You stand there. You're pouring your heart out to them. What makes you feel better? Just if they say, okay, we'll fix this, come back Friday. Or if they say, you know what? I'm sorry you're having that issue. And I can tell that you're having just a really frustrating day. But you know what? I think I can help you with this. Here's what we're going to do. Again, this is communicating to that client that you view that client as a person instead of just a problem. Right? And I think that's what I think that right there is kind of what gets us that stigma of the cantankerous, angry, mean IT support person. Is that you're looking at the problems more than you're looking at the people. So we can use visualization here. We can kind of put ourselves in different situations. Think about how we can do things. We can use inclusive language. We can say we rather than I or you. We're in this together instead of this is something you did or I need or I can fix this or I will fix this or whatever. We're in this together. You have this problem. I can help you solve it. We can do this. And just smile. Just present yourself well. And when you start to build that understanding, you can also understand the problem. And when you're talking to the user, one of the ways that you might want to do this is you might want to just express the problem in your own words. Just take what you understand the problem to be in your head after you've listened to them talk about it and turn it back around and turn it into something that they can understand just to make sure that you got it right. You've told me this. What I think you're saying is this. That way you have a full comprehension of the problem before trying to work on a solution. Now, I want to run through some things here really quickly before we go. I like to leave these streams to be around an hour. And especially in this course, I can get a little long-winded. But I don't want to be long-winded in this instance. I want to get everything out that I need to get out. So I'm going to skip to a few slides down the way and talk about dealing with difficult clients and going through this really quickly in our last 10 minutes here. Because you see, a difficult client is going to come your way. You're going to get a client who, because, as we've said, like when they have a computer problem, there are times when it can take their whole life and upheave it because things that they want or things that they need are solely tied to that computer. Right? Like, put it in perspective of, like, the guy who has to be able to communicate with his family who live halfway around the world. The only way that they have it is a computer. And if that was my problem, and I knew that I couldn't communicate with my loved ones because of this problem, I might be a little ticked off. But it has nothing to do with you. Or if I'm a user who tech support agents in the past have been kind of rude and cantankerous to, who've treated me more like a problem than a person, I might be a little angry. So because of these situations, because of these, essentially because of being human, you're going to encounter users who are angry, who are not communicative, who are rude, or even who are abusive, which we don't want those. Nobody deserves that. We have to focus on the specific problem. Don't get off base, right? We're just focusing on that problem with that individual at that given time. We need to get the information needed from that client. But through it all, we need to provide excellent customer service in a respectful manner, which is going to be super tough. It's at these times when you're dealing with difficult clients that I like to use the term grace. When we're trying to provide excellent customer service in a respectful manner, we are showing these individuals grace. When they're angry, when they're rude, when they're non-communicative. And then we just need to get out of there as soon as possible. We need to do our best to turn this situation around and get out of there and get on to the next thing. High priority it. Try to turn this around and then get out of there. Get on to the next one. And there are more types of difficult clients than just the ones that are angry and abusive. You know, we see people who complain. We see power users being a difficult client sometimes because they come in, they think they know more than the person that's standing on the other side of the desk than them. So you want to try to be more inclusive of them in that project and show your expertise, show the things that you know, and why you can be the expert in that situation, and then try to include them a little bit so that they can calm down and see that they're respected. Incidents that get off track, you know, that's something you want to keep it on track. Users who are upset or angry, users who are abusive. If you encounter an abusive user, here's what you do right now. You get your manager. That's it. If you're the manager, hopefully you've had more training in de-escalation. But oftentimes, you know, just by the nature of somebody being a manager, which is just downright stinky, right? Just by the nature that they're a manager and you're not a manager, they might have more respect for the manager than they would have for you. But nobody in any position, anywhere, deserves somebody being abusive to them, or should take somebody being abusive to them. And just being upset is way different than being abusive. Right? We can have grace for people who are angry, for people who are upset. If they're abusive, that's a whole different situation. People who are reluctant to respond, people who won't stop responding. In both cases, it's about getting good quality information. Right? They're either giving you too much information and you're inundated with information and you don't really know what to pick out as important and what to pick out as not important, or they're not giving you enough information for you to kind of figure out the problem. And so you kind of have to guide them to some areas where you want them to be. Whether it's to calm down and talk a little less, or to try to talk more, or what have you. Let's see if there's anything that I really need to end on here. Otherwise, we'll probably go ahead and wrap up this live stream for today. You know what? I think this is a good place to stop. We've pretty much reached our hour mark anyway. So as you're approaching your Module 2 material, you're reading your text, you're looking at the things that are in the module, and you're getting ready to do your labs. You know, this is food for thought. These are things that I want you to think about. You know, the importance of listening, the importance of doing all of this, the different ways that we need to handle different situations. And so if you have any questions while you encounter any of this stuff, while you're working through any of this stuff, I want you to contact me. Let me know. Either in send me a Microsoft Teams message, send me an email. These are the easiest ways to get in contact with me. Just in case anybody's here with me live, I'm going to turn the music back on and hang out in the chat for just a minute or two to answer any questions that people who might be here with me live might have. But that's all that I have for you for today. I want to thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you next time.